Good morning. I'm Reverend Aaliyah Kemmler, minister of First Parish Church of Groton, Massachusetts. I am so glad you are here for services this morning. Please say hello in the chat if you haven't already so that we know you are here. We are a community seeking to deepen spiritually, to take care of one another, and to be a blessing to this world. Unitarian Universalism is a faith for all, so whoever you are, whatever country you come from, whoever you love, whatever your abilities, challenges, or gifts, wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome here. If you're visiting us for the first time today, please know how glad we are that you found us. Members of the Welcoming All group are on the chat and would love to welcome you. Everyone is encouraged to come to coffee hour on Zoom after the service is over, and you'll see the link to coffee hour on your screen. There are many different ways to stay connected to our community during this pandemic time. Just email welcome@uugroton.org and we will get you connected. The Caring Committee, Pastoral Visitors Team, and Compassionate Callers are all available to offer support, as am I. Please reach out if you need anything, and reach out if you have skills or strength to offer. We are all in this together, and together we will help each other through. Special thanks this morning, as always, to Sean McCann, our Director of Music Ministries at First Parish, for the beautiful prelude music, and to Marissa Benson for the chalice lighting, and to the musical group Wind Chimes, which is Nancy Peters and Sue Gleason, and you will hear their gorgeous music during the postlude, so please stay for that. The love which holds our congregation together is strong and deep and real. It is not limited by walls or screens or distance. So welcome. So now I will ring the meditation bell, and I invite you to take 3 deep, slow breaths. 1 for yourself, 1 for your loved ones, and 1 for this world. We begin our service each Sunday by lighting the chalice, which is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Our theme for the month of October is deep listening. Listening to our own hearts. Listening for the quiet voice of truth inside of us that reminds us we are stronger than we sometimes know. Listening to the holy, which tells us we are beloved. Listening to each other and listening to the world. And today in particular, listening to the trees. Marissa Benson, our young adult and youth programs coordinator, will light the chalice this morning.
Good morning. My name is Marissa Benson, and I'm the Youth and Young Adult Programs Coordinator for First Parish Church. And this morning I'm going to share a song that I wrote. It's really short, and if you feel called, I'd love for you to join in. And then after that, I'm going to light the chalice by sharing a poem that I wrote about trees. So I hope that these 2 things nourish you this morning. the trees can hear me sing. I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. When I walk upon the earth, I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. When I walk upon the earth, I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. When I walk upon the earth, I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. When I walk upon the earth, I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. When I walk upon the earth, I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. This poem is called Listening to the Trees. Perhaps the truth is that we are all trees, standing together but apart, dancing effortlessly in the wind, admiring one another's shapes and colors. Perhaps we gaze up at the stars together, both effortlessly witnessing the world unfolding. Perhaps we are a collection of trees whose bark make their own pattern, rugged and soft and yet sharp and coarse. Our branches may vary in size and shape, but all are glorious in their own unique expression. Maybe our differences make the meeting of us, the standing together, more brilliant. Maybe the contrast between us all makes each one a little more beautiful. It's possible that what could have been comparison, judgment for our differences, is actually an offering, a deep invitation for listening and presence. A gift, a mode of inspiration, an opening in our consciousness, a release of what we thought we knew about right or wrong, and instead just being together. Perhaps we need not be in one another's shadows. Quite possibly the sun and the moon hit us equally with radiance, shining upon the earth, gifting our existence to the soil. We are all seen, never taking away from one another, but rather enhancing each other's grace and brilliance, giving to each other's lives by our mere existence. So thank you. Thank you for being here, for showering us with your cosmic branches, for letting your leaves fall onto the supple earth, for blessing us with your magic. You are needed here. You are so deeply loved. So today, I'll light the chalice in the spirit of listening to the trees, and listening to each other. And now we'll sing together Spirit of Life, first in English, first in Spanish, my apologies, and then in English. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y el corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla sube el mar, hasta modelar la justicia de la vida. Agrégame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you, Marissa. We all need to sing Marissa's song this week. When I walk upon the earth, I wonder if the trees can hear me sing. So now I want to talk to the children for just a little bit. First, let's say our words for gathering together. Say them with me and we'll do our hand motions together. We are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands ready to help. So today I'm talking to the grown-ups about how to listen to trees. Kids are already very good at this, and you don't need to be taught. But as we get older, we sometimes forget how to do some really important things like how to dance and how to draw pictures and how to sing and how to listen to trees. So if you have a chance this week, I hope you will do some tree listening. Pick a tree, and I don't even need to remind you how to listen to it. But the way I listen is to sit down near it and lean against the trunk, or put my ear against the trunk, or put my hand on it and listen carefully. I would love for you to tell me what you hear, and also see if you can teach one of your grown-ups how to do this and talk to them about what you hear, and maybe they'll be able to hear it too if they practice a little bit. So the story this morning is called The Memory Tree by Britta Teckentrup, and it is a story about a little fox and about how a tree can help those who love the fox remember him. The Memory Tree. There once was a fox who lived with all the other animals in the forest. Fox had lived a long and happy life, but now he was old. Very slowly, Fox made his way to his favorite spot in the forest. He looked at his beloved trees one last time and lay down. Fox closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and died. There's Fox. Everything around Fox was still and peaceful, and snow began to fall, gently covering him with a soft blanket. Owl had watched Fox from the top of the tree. She flew down and landed next to her friend. Owl was really sad. She had known Fox for a long time, but Owl knew the time had come for Fox to die. One by one, Fox's friends came to the clearing in the forest. First squirrel and weasel, then bear and deer and bird, and finally rabbit and mouse came to sit by Fox. Fox had been loved by everyone because he had been kind and caring, and no one could imagine life in the forest without him. The animals sat in silence for a very long time. There they all are. Owl was the first to speak. Owl smiled warmly and said, "I remember when Fox and I were very young. Every autumn we raced to see who could catch more falling leaves." The other animals remembered that and smiled. Mouse said softly, "I remember how much Fox loved the sunset. He always sat at this exact spot." The animals remembered. Many of them had joined Fox watching the sun go down. It was a happy memory, and their sad hearts filled with warmth. Do you see Fox and Mouse watching the sun go down together? Bear remembered how Fox had looked after her cubs one spring. Rabbit smiled when they told the story of how Fox had played tag with them in the tall grass. Squirrel talked about Fox helping him dig up buried nuts in the deep snow last winter. One by one, the animals remembered their favorite stories about Fox. Fox had touched all of their lives of all the animals in the forest with his warmth and kindness, and they all smiled as they remembered. While the animals talked, a little orange plant grew out of the snow where Fox was lying. So small and delicate at first, it was hardly noticeable, but then it grew bigger and stronger and more beautiful with every story. Do you see it? That tiny little orange plant. The animals talked about Fox all through the night, and in the morning that little plant had grown into a small tree. The animals saw the tree and they knew that Fox was still a part of them. During the next days, weeks, and months, the animals remembered many more stories about Fox, and their hearts began to feel lighter. The more they remembered, the more the tree grew, higher and higher, and more beautiful, until it was the tallest tree in the forest, a tree made from memories and full of love. Fox's tree was now big and strong enough to shelter all of the animals. It was always buzzing with life. The birds built their nests among the leaves, and Owl raised her grand chicks on the branches. Squirrel found a cozy home in the trunk, and bear and deer and rabbit slept in its shade. The tree gave strength to everyone who had loved Fox. And so Fox lived on in their hearts forever. so now I invite you into a time of stillness and prayer or meditation, or just a time to sit in quiet. I will pause twice during this time and invite you to use that time to tell us in the chat, first your sorrows or worries, anything that weighs on your heart today, and the second time your joys and also your gratitude. The chat is open to all during the service, but then it will disappear once the service is over. The words to lead us into prayer this morning are by Carrie Newcomer. This is her poem called To Be Like a Tree. See how the trees reach up and outward, as if their entire existence were an elegant gesture of prayer. See how they welcome the breath of spirit in all its visible and invisible forms. See how the roots reach downward and out, embracing the physical, the body and bones of its soul of earth and stone, allowing half its life to be sheltered in the most quiet and secret places. Oh, if I could be more like a tree on this Sunday morning, to feel the invisible breath of spirit touch me as tenderly as a kiss on the forehead. If I could courageously and confidently dig down into the dark where the groundwater runs deep, where shelter and sanctuary can be had and held, to be like a tree, with all its bent and unbent places, a whole and holy thing, from its topmost twigs to the deepest taproot, to all the good and graceful spaces between. So let us rest here together and feel that invisible breath of spirit moving inside us and among us as we create this time of sanctuary. First, let us give thanks for this new morning, for the trees which are so utterly beautiful in their changing, for falling leaves and fall wind. Let us give thanks for all that is good. Let us pray for all who are broken-hearted, for all who are grieving, for all who are sick in body or mind or spirit, for all who struggle, for all who are in need, for all healthcare workers, other essential workers and teachers and families. Let us pray for all who are on the edge of despair or well over that edge, for all whose faith in the goodness of humanity gets shaken and frayed, which is most of us these days. Let us breathe in love and breathe out peace and steady ourselves again. We hold in love and pray for these members of our community, for Marie, who is at the end of her life, and for Meg and Eric and their family as they accompany her, for Lauren's mother, Bernice, and her husband, Bob, both of whom have cancer, for healing for them, for Christina's mother, who had a heart attack last night, for Elizabeth's father and her little niece, both of whom are facing serious health concerns, for Mary and her family on the death of her beloved father-in-law, Jack. And I invite you now to take a moment to share your sorrow or concern with us in the chat. Tell us what you are carrying so that we can hold it with you. We hold all of these concerns in love. And we also celebrate and share our joy and our gratitude. This morning we share Laura's gratitude that she's able to stay in her home for another year and that her very old beloved Kitty remains in good health. And Christina's gratitude that she is recovering from cancer. I invite you to use this moment to share your joy or your celebration or something that you feel particularly grateful for this week so that we can celebrate with you and be grateful with you. And let us pray now for deep healing for our country, for the healing of our collective soul. We pray for a peaceful, fair election, and for at least the beginning of the end of this chapter of hatred and bitterness that has divided neighbors and families and friends. Let us become our better angels. Let us live and work into the dream of a better America with justice and equity for all. And finally, let us pray for ourselves. May we be like trees, strong and deeply rooted and able to withstand powerful winds. Let us remember again and again that we are held in love, which is vaster than our imagining, and we are connected to each other. May we find strength in that love and in knowing that we are not alone. Amen. So a couple of announcements. First, I hope you will hit the like button because doing that will help others who are in need of a religious community to find us. If you are local, please come to our weekly Vigil for Black Lives, which happens today and every Sunday afternoon from 1 to 2 on Main Street along the Church Common. Join us to be in witness to the value and preciousness of Black lives. Next Sunday, October 25th, Matt Meyer will be leading our service. As some of you know, he is a wonderful drummer, percussionist, song leader, and his services are joyful and energetic and great for people of all ages. So I hope you will join us for that same time and place next Sunday. All are welcome to join the new First Parish Daily Gratitude Practice. We have 30 of us now on that email list, and we share what we are grateful for every day. It is helpful, especially on the days when we don't feel particularly grateful. So just email gratitude@uugroton.org and we will get you signed up. The church leaders and I continue to be deeply grateful for your ongoing support of First Parish Church. Please go on over to the church's website, www.uugroton.org, and make a donation as you are able. Your generosity sustains the work of our community right now. Thank you so much. So the poet Mary Oliver wrote, when I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks, and the pines. They give off such hints of gladness. I would almost say that they save me, and daily. I am so distant from the hope of myself, in which I have goodness and discernment and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me the trees stir in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." The light flows from their branches and they call again. It's simple, they say. And you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine. Another poet named Julia Fehrenbacher begins her poem called "The Cure for It All" this way. Go gently today. Don't hurry or think about the next thing. Walk with the quiet trees. Can you believe how brave they are? How kind. Model your life after theirs. I wish it were simple for us to be more like trees. I wish it were simple for us to go easier, to be filled with light and to shine. I believe it is a very sound spiritual model to try to be like the trees, to be quiet and slow, and not to worry about the next bad thing that this terrible year may throw at us, but instead to rest in strength and stillness, to let go when it is time to let go, to wait through the cold seasons of our lives and to renew ourselves when the sun returns in the spring. When I was 10 years old, I had a friendship with a willow tree in our backyard. I can't think of any other word to describe it but friendship. The tree was small for a willow, I think, and it had this perfect hollowed out space under the branches. And when the tree was green, it made this dome-shaped cave, dappled with light, just the right size for a 10-year-old. I set up a little home for myself in there. I made an altar with shells and stones I had found, and I had made something called a God's Eye in camp, which is yarn wrapped around and around 4 twigs that are set like this until it resembled an eye. I used to pray in the tree because I was like that. But I didn't know how to pray, so I just talked, and it was easier to talk to the tree than to a God who I didn't really understand at all. I felt like I understood the tree more, or actually rather that the tree understood me. And so I spent a lot of time in that tree for the 2 years we lived in that house. And when I read Julia Fehrenbacher's poem about the trees being brave and kind, I thought of that willow tree. I always felt it was brave and kind, and it somehow knew that I was there. Well, it turns out there is scientific proof that these things are true. I've been learning about trees this week, and what I have learned is amazing. As the writer Maria Popova puts it, trees are relational miracles, entangled in complex symbiotic webs of interbeing, constantly communicating with one another through chemical signals dispatched along the fungal networks that live in their roots. An invisible, astonishing underworld It's always been there, only recently discovered. The Canadian forest ecologist Suzanne Simard has done groundbreaking research on trees and how they communicate with each other. She has a TED Talk, and it's easy for even non-scientists like myself to understand and appreciate. And what she has discovered in decades of research in the forests of British Columbia is what many of us felt or somehow knew as children, that trees do talk and listen and feel, and that trees help each other as well as other living beings. Trees not only contain entire communities of life within them, they are deeply embedded in communities. They check in with their tree neighbors, they share food, and they even pass information, wisdom, and warnings about what is happening in the forest in order to help each other survive. Is this not amazing? They do all of it through their root systems. Symbiotic fungi partners with the roots and grows in these countless branching threads, and they spread much further than even the tree roots can, and they connect with the systems of other trees in these vast and complicated underground networks. The networks can connect the trees together, they pass food and information back and forth constantly, and each tree hosts hundreds of different kinds of fungi, and each kind of fungi connects with a different set of trees. The trees pass sugar and carbon through these networks, and some of which is eaten by the fungi, and some of which gets passed on to baby trees to help them grow. In turn, the fungi pass nutrients from the soil back to the trees to feed them. But not only that, the fungi pass along information from tree to tree about events like droughts or insect attacks so that trees can start making the particular compounds they need to protect themselves from whatever's happening, even if it is happening somewhere else in the forest. Every forest is a vast intelligence, and this tree intelligence helps make the forests stronger and more resilient for all who live there. It's like a huge, interconnected, underground web. Seymour identified what she calls mother trees in every forest, and she found that these mother trees are the largest trees in the forest, and they act as central hubs for these vast below-ground networks. They support young trees or seedlings by sending the baby trees their excess carbon, and they even reduce their own roots to make room for the roots of the baby trees to grow. And when mother trees are injured or dying, they send messages to their children in the form of specific compounds which will help those young trees resist the same dangers. The German forest manager, Peter Wallenben, has identified how trees actually feel pain. In his book called The Hidden Life of Trees, he writes about his work to prove that beeches and spruce and oaks all register pain as soon as a tiny creature starts nibbling on their leaves. When a caterpillar takes a bite out of a single leaf, the tissue around the site of that bite changes. The leaf sends out electrical signals just as human tissue does when we get hurt. But these signals aren't transmitted in milliseconds as human signals are. The plant signals travel slowly at the speed of 1/3 of an inch per minute. It takes an hour or more before the tree's defensive compounds reach the leaves to spoil the insect's meal. Wallenben says trees live their lives in the really slow lane. Even when they're in danger, But the slow tempo doesn't mean that a tree is not on top of what is happening. If the roots find themselves in trouble, this information is broadcast throughout the entire tree, which triggers the leaves to release scent compounds, and not just any scent, but scents that are specifically formulated for the problem at hand. In other words, the slowness of the tree's response allows for precision and incredible effectiveness. He also writes about trees as social beings who rely on community in order to survive and thrive. He writes, why are trees such social beings? Why do they share food with their own species and sometimes even go so far as to nourish their competitors? The reasons are the same as for humans. There are advantages to working together. Because a tree is not a forest on its own, it cannot create a consistent local climate. It is at the mercy of wind and weather, but together, trees create an ecosystem that can moderate extremes of heat and cold, that can store water and generate humidity. And in this protected environment, trees can live to be very old. But to get to this point, the community of trees must remain intact. If every tree were looking out only for itself, very few would reach old age, because regular fatalities would come and result in gaps in the tree canopy, which would make it easier for storms to get inside the forest and uproot more trees, and the heat of summer would reach the forest floor and dry it out, and every tree would suffer. Every tree is valuable to the community, he writes, and worth keeping around for as long as possible. And that is why even sick trees are supported and nourished until they recover, because next time it may be the other way around and the supporting tree might be the one in need of help. A tree can only be as strong as the forest that surrounds it. Wise words indeed. Luckily, not all adults have lost the practice of listening to trees and learning from them, and it is always something we can start to do again. In our community, we have some adults who are really good at learning from the trees. They are good at learning from them, I suspect, because they spend so much time in the company of trees. Here's some of what they told me when I asked them to share what they have heard and learned from trees recently. Karen A. wrote, I used to practice a form of Qigong facing a tree. It gave me the impression that trees are our mirrors. As humans, we breathe harmoniously. We have a similar structure. Kathleen wrote, I listen and talk to trees all the time, like every day. The trees at the General Field in Groton are particularly talkative. At the risk of sounding weird, they tell me they love me. The trees also remind me that the world is still solid and safe. And when I rest my backs against their trunks, I know this. I had a very nice conversation with a brilliant fiery orange maple on this very topic this afternoon. When I walk in the woods, I like to stop and stand on the roots of mighty pines that extend into the trail. You can see exactly which tree they belong to, and they remind me, especially when I take my shoes off, that we are all connected, that I am a part of them. Often when I'm lying in bed at night, I can hear my trees singing. I don't always know what they're saying, but I'm always sure it's something good. Nancy says, I had a tendency to look down when I was feeling troubled, but the trees remind me that I can have courage, the courage to look up and beyond. Amy says that the trees tell her they are happy to share their healing energy with us. She advises, be kind, lean against them and just ask, Wait for a bit and share your appreciation. Dodie says the trees tell her to stand strong. Elizabeth writes, what I've heard when I've listened with my whole being. There is something profoundly solid in this world. Something eternal beyond all thought, something that knows us deep down to our bones and holds us soul deep. Betty wrote, when we lived in West Groton, an enormous white pine grew outside our kitchen window. It was over 250 years old, and I would actually hug it sometimes, although it was too big for me to get my arms around it. I felt that Pachamama, or the spirit of the goddess, Mother Earth, lived inside that tree and was talking to me. Not so much in words, but in connection. Catherine says, when I was little, I'd read books nestled up in our old willow tree. It had a low cleft so my dog could climb up with me. This last week I stood against a tree in our little foresty backyard overlooking the pond. Grounded to the earth, looking to the sky and water, I felt an electric connection and felt the word Great Spirit rise up in me. The child in me that talked to the sky and all living things was home. Karen Z wrote, I'll never see a tree the same after an ice storm that happened years ago. It was like I had never noticed all these giants towering all around until the day they started to crack and fall. It was that day I learned that they moan and creak like ghosts in the woods, and the ice fell off when they creaked like crystals raining onto a frozen lake. Leo wrote, I've always had a special connection with the maple in my front yard. I would climb up the trunk when I was little and swing from the swing we have hanging from its branches. Its branches also stretch their way right outside my bedroom window. It is a reminder for me to keep growing, to stay true to my roots, to be patient. Nadia says, I pray in the woods often. It feels like the forest is in a constant state of prayer. Karen O wrote, trees are my sanctuary. I can never be lost in a forest. It is always home. And Jackie writes, no one will remember if my house was clean, only if I was present and useful, and I could learn so much simply from walking among the trees. You can guess what your spiritual homework is this week. Find yourself a tree. Walk among the trees if you can, or find just one, and sit or stand a while under its branches, lean against its trunk, or lie down underneath it and look up. Put your hands on it or hug the trunk. If you're doing this on a city street and someone looks at you strangely, just tell them your minister told you to do it. That usually does the trick. But find a way to touch a tree and listen to it. And maybe your listening will become a conversation, because you will find you have some things you want to tell the tree, and it has some things it wants to say back to you. This story is from Omid Safi, who's a professor of Islamic studies at Duke University. He's a spiritual leader and a writer for the On Being project, and he's someone whose words I look for frequently these days. And he wrote this story about hiking with his partner among the Northern California redwoods a couple of years ago. His words seem even more poignant after this year's wildfires when thousands of redwoods were burned. He writes, we found ourselves in Muir Woods, that ancient cathedral of 1,000-year-old beauties. And at first all I could do was to tilt my head back, trying to take in the tips of these amazing trees that seemed to come from a time when giants roamed this earth. After a while, my sight returned to the ground, and I started to notice the beauty at a tree by tree level. These giants have their own variations, and sometimes they grow in clusters. Again and again, we noticed circles of redwoods growing, dancing, as it were, around a shorter, dead-looking single redwood tree. The central redwood often looked charred, burned to the core. Was it a human fire or perhaps a lightning bolt that had caused it? My initial response was sadness. But a sign by one of these rings made me stop in my tracks. The sign read, "Hundreds of years ago, a single large redwood tree grew here. Then disaster struck. The trunk of the large redwood was killed, perhaps by a repeated and severe wildfire. From here you can see the original tree trunk still standing upright now, a dead and blackened snag. Despite such terrible damage, the tree did not die. Below the ground, its massive root system was full of vitality. Before long, hundreds of young, bright green burl sprouts began to come up around the circle formed by the root crown of the original tree. Some of those sprouts have grown into the full-size trees that today stand in a circle around the original trunk. Despite such terrible damage, the tree did not die." Safi writes, "We are this charred tree and the family of trees growing around it. We are the roots, the burning, the healing, and the regrowth. Each of us go through terrible damages and losses and suffering in our lifetime. May it be that despite such terrible damage, the tree of our life does not die. May it be that there is vitality in our roots, and the charred tree of our suffering gives birth to 100 new blooms dancing around us, newer versions of ourselves that leap to life from what we would have deemed to be our death." Safi says, "I don't want to die, of course, not yet, not now, not for a while. I want to dance with my children at their weddings and tell stories of love and resistance to their as of yet unborn children, but my time will come, and so will yours. And when that time comes, may I have, may you have, may we all have deep and ancient roots that are filled with light, so that new life, new soul, new life sprouts from the charred pieces of our being. The tree did not die. The new trees are the old one, and they grow out of the roots it put down. May we witness this growth out of our being. May there be new loved ones circling us as we circle our loved ones. Even the trees remind us, friends, we are not alone, and we will come through." So I invite you to stay for the postlude music and then come on over to coffee hour. The link will be on your screen. This Sunday, we will have several different coffee hour rooms, each one focused on a different question or theme. But for now, put one hand on your heart and with the other reach out. We are connected by strong and sturdy threads of love. You go in peace and be a blessing to this world.